The referee for the third, fourth place playoff match, the bronze medal match taking place in the Hard Luck Stadium in Miami this Saturday. Don't worry, it's not going to be an England slagging kind of podcast, just a lot of bad puns like that. I will look into why England get beat and what it means for world football. So I definitely think it has a trickle down effect for Scotland, England continuing to fail to win the World Cup or to even get to a second final. But the referee for that game in Miami on Saturday night is a guy called Jesus Valenzuela. Jesus Valenzuela. And he's from Venezuela. And the referee for the final in New Jersey on Sunday night, Spain against Argentina, meeting for the first time in the World Cup final, is Slavko Vincic of Slovenia. Slavko of Slovenia. Valenzuela of Venezuela. Even if you want to go Slavko Vincic, like SV, his initials. It's the consonants, the main consonants of their names and the countries they come from, these referees, in the last two games of this World Cup, are the same consonants and in the same order in the name and in the country. I like that kind of symmetry. I like that kind of pattern. I like that kind of balance, and that's why I want there to be a third, fourth place playoff. I want to know who finished third and fourth. If I had my way, I would have all the losing quarterfinalists going into maybe a wee league table and playing off till we found out who's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth at World Cup. And if you did, what's the next thing you'd want to know? Who was ninth and tenth? Who was ninth and tenth then? If we're going to find out the top eight at a World Cup, who was ninth and tenth? Exactly, damn right, you would want to find that out because we need to know, we deserve to know. This idea that the third, fourth place playoff is insignificant and is a waste of time is shared by most people and probably most of the players and the management taking part in it, but not by me, and that's the main thing. How you doing, folks? This is your Fat Eck. You're damn right, after 102 games, I want there to be a 103rd and 104th game because we deserve to know. We deserve to know who finished fourth after watching the best part of a century of games over a 5-week period. Never mind the fact it's the World Cup, the most important tournament on the planet, and it's a massive trickle-down effect right down to the very grassroots of the games. The kids are running about talking about who's the greatest player in the world, and they'll have arguments that include the World Cup. It's because the World Cup. You know, Messi's won the World Cup. At least they'll know that somebody will say to him, this guy called Maradona, he only played in 2 World Cup finals and he never played in the Copa America final. But Messi, he's won Copa Americas and the World Cup. This is his third World Cup final that he's played in for. And then you can throw in other stuff about the Champions Leagues and what Maradona didn't do in Europe to win UEFA Cup and stuff like that. But I'm a Maradona man. I grew up Maradona for me, the greatest of all time, and emotionally always will be. I think there's less and less reason now to think that Messi hasn't thoroughly overtaken El Diego when it comes to that. So you need to know this is the trickle-down effect of the World Cup. When it goes right down to every conversation you're having about football, even if being sarcastic, you're watching Ruston Winton Rovers against Salkits Vicks or something like that, and who do you think he is? Pele, Cruyff, Beckenbauer, Maradona, Messi. That's you throw in the sarcasm that it's coming for the very top. It goes right through the global game. So you're damn right. We should find out who is third in a tournament that only comes around every 4 years and is talked about for the rest of our footballing existence. Preview pod for the 2 final games being played in this World Cup, coming to you in association with Jersnet. Check out Jersnet, usually every Friday at 9 o'clock and every Sunday 9:30 p.m. live on the Jersnet YouTube channel. Hasn't been through the close season because it's a Rangers focused podcast mostly, but the clue's in the name, Jersnet, but coming back soon. I'm not quite sure if it's next weekend or the weekend after. I think it's coming back before. It will be definitely back before Rangers played Dundee United in their opening league game up at Tannadice on the last day of July, but it'll be taken in a few friendlies. The friendlies are starting to arrive thick and hard for Rangers, so that's quite a sexual way of putting that. I must be quite excited to see Rangers coming back. Quite optimistic, quite up for it, the new season. Dr. Freud let me know that one there. But it's Jersnet is coming back soon, so check out Jersnet. I'm sponsored by Jersnet, and I'm also sponsored by Jockey Wilson's wife, Mrs. Jockey Wilson. I've got the Union Jack up there, but in case you think it's because I've got a whole lot of Argentina stuff up, and they had to do the thing with the Malvinas flag, didn't they? And that's something for bitter England fans to complain about. But listen, I've got two cousins in the army, or were in the army. You know, one wasn't even born when the Falklands crisis took place. He's younger than me, for Christ's sake. You know, and I've got a mate for school who was over there. My two cousins, neither of them were in the Falklands conflict, but Bernard was definitely. He was in Northern Ireland a lot. He was over at Northern Ireland, both Catholic, just in case you're worried about me being uber staunch and getting pure. That's why, in case you think I'm doing the raise the colours thing, there's a wee Union Jack up there, just to temper all the Argentinian stuff in case you want to get a bit staunch and political about it. I like the guy on the VT, as we say in the trades, head of the trade that I am not in and never will be, and never have been, ahead of England against Argentina. The other night, there was a fella, he was in, I think he was in Buenos Aires or something, maybe he was over for the game, he was in the States, but he's got the old filial top on, the beautiful goalkeepers, Argentina goalkeepers jersey, green, with a heavy-duty white Adidas stripes now on it, and he was saying, we're rivals, no enemies, I don't want to mix up politics with sport. That's not the case for at least 50% of the people who go to games. We know that better than anybody else in this country, but it was nice of him to say that, and I'm kind of in that mindset. But just in case you thought, how can you do that? Well, I've got pals and family that have served in the army and all that. So I remember going to see Rangers against Forfar. Rangers were playing Forfar in the Scottish Cup semi-final at Hampden. 0-0, went to a replay. Forfar, Scottish Cup semi-final at Hampden, and I think that was the first game we'd played after Argentina had invaded the Falklands in '82, and I remember standing at the old Rangers end, you know. Argentina get to fuck. Well, I can't remember what the tunes were, but there's lots of stuff. But if you hate Argentina, clap your hands. I'm thinking, I mean, we didn't win the World Cup in '78, but it was realising there was something going on, something different. So I'm not saying I'm pure pro Argentina, and I'm aware of horrors that happened to the Argentinian people at the hands of the same junta, maybe trying to divert their attention from that by invading, creating an enemy outside of their own country to cover up what they're doing. Never be think about that voting in the next elections. But I'm just putting it, but just so you don't think I'm one of the raise the colours scumbags, you know, that raise the colours stuff. I've put a wee, it's the thing with Karl Lagerfeld. It's Karl Lagerfeld that's on top of that wee Union Jack that I've got up there, because Karl Lagerfeld, I mean, if all these guys are into the raise the colour stuff, are usually wearing a lot of Adidas. You know, that's Adi Dazzler. I think he supplied the Nazis during the war with their footwear, so that's why he changed his name from Adolf to Addy, just to get trend, Adolf, not a good name anymore, I'll go Addy. Well, there you go, it's Karl Lagerfeld, it's my fashion icon. You know, he was alive during the war, as we don't really know what him or his family did during the Second World War, but look, great at that H&M advert when he did the work for H&M. That was it was brilliant. It was brilliant. But I'm sponsored by all that nonsense. My name's Alec Anderson. Welcome to your life. There's no turning back. Even while we sleep, we will find you acting on your best behavior. Turn your back on Mother Nature. Everybody wants to rule the world. Wants to rule the world, not the World Cup. You want to rule the world of football. It's lazy. It's easy. I'm probably getting the lyrics wrong as well. I've been on holiday, folks. Thanks very much for joining me again. Sorry to go away for a fortnight, but you deserved that break more than I did. The break on your ears. I'm only coming back to do a wee token. Just so much the World Cup that was a vast majority. But I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to leave you. I didn't want to. But she wants to go. She wants to go on a holiday. You know, so I had to do it. I just want to sit and watch the World Cup as well. You know, I just want to come and talk to you about it. Fucking let me. So, you know, I missed a lot of the heavy duty stuff, a lot of the really amazing games, exciting stuff just had to be, I couldn't pod about. I did a lot of tweeting about, well, not tweeting, blue skying about them, but so I'm just back to go in there and throw in a few stats and stuff, a few random fatuous thoughts about the World Cup. I'll do a proper roundup of the World Cup, and then after the final, and then I'll have to get moving quick because it's I've got San Etienne Wednesday night. San Etienne. I'm trying to concentrate on the World Cup. Rangers, stop it. Oh, nice. That was lovely. Arranging that friendly. I'll go on about that in great length, but That'll be next week. So I'll just do a quick wee chat about the World Cup wees, and thanks very much for joining me again. I'm so sorry, but you'd probably, I mean, if you just wanted to listen to my part for the Rangers stuff, then maybe my World Cup obsession was getting a bit much with you, a bit much for you anyway. But it's the third, fourth place playoff on Saturday, and people are kind of. Did I mention anything about Scaloni? Did I mention that Lionel Scaloni, the Argentina manager, and Luis de la Fuente, the Spain manager, the final on Sunday? No, they both were at Seville in minor management roles. I don't know what one it is. I keep getting them mixed up. One of them was manager of one of the youth teams, coaching youth teams or underage teams at Sevilla, at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan. And the other one was assistant manager. I think it might have been Scaloni who was assistant manager at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan, because they both played in La Liga, even though Scaloni, the Argentine, is most brilliant or decent. Anybody who gets capped for Argentina, the men's national team usually ends up playing all over Europe to make some proper money. I only got a handful of caps for. Oh, I've not looked into. Did De La Fuente get caps for Spain? Oh, I don't know. He must have done. Maybe I actually saw him playing. Did he play in that Spain team that I saw at Hampden in 1984? The reason I'm saying it is because their playing careers as well. I'm talking about the balance, the symmetry, what it's all about. It's maybe a wee lesson into what kind of manager England need. Shouldn't have sacked Southgate. They've got one's a left back. Scaloni was a right back. De La Fuente was a left back. They both were at Sevilla in minor management roles on their way into management, but also they both had their greatest moments in club football, the most consistent moments. The longest period served was at a La Liga club, in that club, that La Liga side's last great period of domestic dominance. Scaloni he's about 16, 17 years younger, Scaloni, even though he's going to equal, he's got a chance on Sunday of equaling Vittorio Pozzo's record of being the only guy ever to retain the World Cup as a manager. He was at Deportivo La Coruña, I don't know, for years. I mean, that's where he played most games in his club career, and he was there when they won La Liga 99-2000, I think that was. Before that, you had De La Fuente was at the great Athletic Club side of Bilbao in the mid-80s, who won La Liga. I think it was 1984, then retained it in 85. They definitely won it twice in a row in the mid-80s. I'm sure that's the last time they won La Liga. And Real Sociedad won it in 1983. They won it before, I'm sure it was 83. Real Sociedad won it 3 in a row for the two great Basque clubs winning La Liga back in the 80s. I'm sure that's the last time either of them won the Spanish title. But it's quite amazing that De La Fuente, who's a left back at Athletic Club, a vicious time for Spain. Don't ever let anybody tell you, if you're the same age. I'm 57 now. If you're my age, you will know. You will know what Spain were like in the 80s and into the 90s as well. In part, they're still cheating gets at times. Their gamesmanship's quite sickening at times. Nothing compared to Argentina's, mind you. But this amazing attacking football that they play, and I've been playing for years, a tiki-taka thing, and into this variation of it with De La Fuente and that. And don't let them sell you this propaganda that that's how they've always played football in Spain. They've always been capable of that kind of football, but they were vicious. I mean, proper nasty leg-breaking bastards. Horrible stuff, Spanish football, the club scene and the national team. Definitely in the 80s, anyway, in the 70s as well. But I saw the butcher of Bilbao, Goycochea, who was a teammate of Andoni Goycochea, who's a teammate of De La Fuente's in that Athletic Club side, the guy who boasted about the fact that he broke Maradona's leg when Maradona was playing for Barcelona at that time. I'll fucking get him, I'll break his leg, and he wore that like a badge of honour. But Ken Dalglish's last goal for Scotland, I was there at Hampden 1984, I think November 84. And we beat Spain 3-1 on our way to qualifying for Mexico 86. But Spain's goal was scored by Goycochea, the butcher of Bilbao. It's fucking magic, And you'd what's his name, Louis Arcanada, who was the Real Sociedad goalkeeper at the time. He was in nets for Spain that night as well. So that was just that was right in the middle of Real Sociedad kind of handing over almost unwillingly to Athletic Club, as the two biggest Basque clubs dominated the Spanish scene then, and but it was great that I saw him scoring. But it's quite amazing that De La Fuentes played in that team. I need to check up if he actually ever played for Spain. But Deportivo, sorry, it's the blue and white stripes that are confusing me. Athletic Club and Real Sociedad are winning La Liga 3 years in a row between them back then, and then he is manager of Spain when they win the Euros in 2024, the last Euros 2 summers ago. They beat England 2-1 in the final in Berlin, and the first goal was scored by Nico Williams of Athletic Club, and the second goal, the winner, is scored by Oyarzabal of Real Sociedad. It's quite amazing. It's almost like he's taken the fact that they don't have a domestic dominance anymore, the Champions League money and what have you. It's deregulation of TV rights and all that has just let Barcelona and Real Madrid completely dominate the rest of the country in a way that they did to a certain extent back then, but they've taken it a different level now. But he's taken that and he's put it into the national team, and it's the players from Athletic Club and Real Sociedad that are winning that the Euros for them, and could have a major say in what happens in Sunday in the World Cup final. But he's that, and you've got Scaloni is at Deportivo La Coruña as well. Neither of them get great pedigree, perhaps, in their coaching. They work their way through the De La Fuente in particular, working his way through the underage groups for the Spanish national team, under 18s, under 21s, and what, and eventually gets the main job, and Scaloni doing the thing as well. If Gareth Southgate stayed on at England, Gareth Southgate's last game as a player was against Sevilla for Middlesbrough in the 2006 UEFA Cup final, which they lost 4-0 to Sevilla with 2 goals from the future Manchester City manager. But anyway, you can carry the way I like. But his last game as a player was captain of Middlesbrough in that 2006 UEFA Cup final, which was against Sevilla. And then these 2 guys have been managers. I'm just based, and to me, that's kind of, they could almost be a back 4. I don't know who else. Didier Deschamps was a kind of sitting midfielder, wasn't he? So that's not really going to work. I don't know if Thomas Tuchel never played at a great level, did he? He looks like he could be a centre half. Maybe he could have a back 4 out of the last 4 managers. But I'm actually working on the basis, this thought I have developed, this feeling, and it's turned out to be bullshit by what England did the other night. It's turned out to be bullshit. But I had this feeling going into that semi-final, England against Argentina, that England were, and it's a comparison that neither party will be particularly fond of, were the Andy Murray of the situation. They were like Andy Murray in 2012. You know, just, he's lost the Wimbledon final to Federer, but then he comes and he wins. Had he been in the Australian Open final? I don't know. But he comes and he has the Olympics thing where he wins the Olympics, but it's not a Grand Slam. He wins the Olympic tennis and he beats Federer in the final at Wimbledon. So it's a kind of plasticky Wimbledon. But he got to that stage where he wins. 2013, he won his first Wimbledon, first out of 2 Wimbledons, and he'd won the US Open earlier that year. I think it was the beginning of 2013. So he's living with Nadal, Federer and Djokovic, who are greats and far better than him generally, but on his day, he was there and thereabouts, and if they slipped up, or one of them had an injury or something like that, he was there to take advantage. It's just England have taken it too far now, to the point where they seem to continually not be able to do it. Really great records. England are a quarter-final team. England are a World Cup quarter-final team, and usually a Euros quarter-final team as well, for most of my life. And I was born 69. I was born just... I never saw them win the World Cup. I don't remember them winning the World Cup, though you heard plenty about it. But they were always a kind of quarter-final team. When they got to the semi-final, Italia 90, it was quite earth-shattering. And when they got to the semi-final again in 2018, but now this is the third for a lot of people my age, and also the second out of the last 3 World Cups. They've gone 1-0 up. They've lost the game 2-1 both times. Final of the Euros, they reached 2 successive. They'd never reached the final of the Euros. I was there, Euro 96, at the semi-final against Germany. I was at a lot of games at Euro 96, but that was a major achievement for them to get that far, even though it was gotten that they didn't get to the final for them. It was the home soil kind of thing, again, being the advantage like it was 30 years before. But they've now been to the final 2 times. That's quite amazing for them. But they've been 1-0 up against Italy, early goal, and then just couldn't build on it at all. And then gradually Italy are getting more and more out of the game. You can see the equaliser coming, and they get it in that final. Then England lose the game on penalties, and they went 1-0 down against Spain, and it's better that they've come back and they've equalised. Cole Palmer doesn't travel this time, and I can see why. Didn't travel to this World Cup, but Cole Palmer equalises against Spain in the Euro 2024 final, but it's like they lose the game 2-1. It's like the minute they get the goal, they go backwards. They can't push on. As Rangers supporters, as a lot of you are, and a lot of you aren't watching this podcast, We know that feeling of getting the first goal. We get the first goal a lot of times and think, oh, that's the game done, really. And it isn't. With England, I think they get the first goal and it's like, oh no, don't know what to do now. We don't know what to do. It's so culturally unused to it, despite the fact that England are a powerhouse in the game. No two ways about it. But it's really, it's weird. And it's to watch. I thought it was that. They'd be the Andy Murray thing. They're going to get their chance because Spain, France and Argentina are all so far ahead of them in terms of tournament experience. I don't think in terms of individual players. I mean, Messi, of course, is the best player in the world, and he's proven that, getting Mbappe right up there, obviously. But what Messi's done, it's just miraculous. The way he keeps going, 39 years old, it's and getting better in many ways. Tactically or whatever, finding different ways to dominate games. It's ridiculous. I mean, he's 2 assists the other night. It's not like he's just a token gesture. He's not a passenger. He's still carrying them through Argentina. It's not like Ronaldo with Portugal. We're thinking they're slowing down just to include him, aren't they? It's the cult of personality. It's not the cult. It is the cult of personality for his teammates and for the whole country of Argentina. But Messi is doing it. He's just 8 goals and he's got more assists now. So that puts him in front of that puts him at the head of just ahead of Mbappe on the Golden Boot stakes going into the final here. It's incredible what Messi is doing. But generally, when you look at the talents of the rest, and he's got some amazing teammates around about him as well, some world class teammates. But generally, overall, I think it is the talent level. England are probably, I think, better than Spain in terms of individual talent. They just don't have the team thing there. France, yeah, I think France have got the best squad in this entire World Cup, and they've lost the semi-final as well. Argentina, it's kind of, Messi away up there, and he's dragging up the rest of his teammates. But if you were to make it, turn it into some sort of mathematical equation, probably got just as good a squad as England all round. But England had their chance, and I thought they were going to do the Andy Murray thing. I thought they were going to come in there and they're going to win that, finally go on and have their Wimbledon 2013 or their US Open 2013. And we're not expecting them to consistently be beating somebody like Argentina or Spain or France, but just do it once and see what kind of boost you get for it. And the FA keep pouring the money in to St George's and all that, and maybe realise they should go with their own managers. I think that's a big thing for me. The way England lost that game the other night, Jude Bellingham should be their manager. There's a thing going on. Lionel Scaloni, and I don't want to repeat a lot of stuff that's been out there on the BBC website and ITV. It's been discussed all over the kind of mainstream media in the few days since England lost that game to Argentina. But there's a talk about how Scaloni, when he was studying management, when he first moved into management, just before he got the Argentina job, he'd been watching France and France winning the World Cup in 2018, beating Croatia in that final in Moscow. And he was just thinking that's the way to do it. What's a quick pass and getting the ball forward, the whole team included and everything. Basically, it was kind of anti-individual. And then he inherits the Argentina team, who are all about a individual, the most based on an individual team ever. And it worked for them before. It worked for them in 1986 and 1990 as well, with Maradona winning one World Cup and then getting to the final. But he gets the Argentina job and he tried it. He's tried his tactics. He's kind of, everybody's the same. Let's be one big unit kind of tactics, and it didn't work for maybe 2 games or something. And then it was like, okay, Messi's the boss. Get the ball to Messi. That's basically the tactic. And he's now on the verge, as I say, of equaling Vittorio Pozzo's record. Vittorio Pozzo, Italy, 1934 and 1938. The only manager to retain the World Cup. Brazil, the only other team to retain the World Cup. So they changed managers between 58 and 62, obviously. So it lets Scaloni have the chance to do that. But it might be becoming a bit like the Cup Winners' Cup, the early days of the Cup Winners' Cup, where the winners, the holders, would lose the following season's final. And it was never retained because Didier Deschamps, of course, won the World Cup with France in 2018, then gets them to the final in 2022 and loses to Argentina. And Argentina, with Scaloni, are now trying to do the same thing. I make Spain fair. I think Spain are the actual favourites for this game on Sunday. But it was a hell of a thing to see England just doing the same thing again. A lot of talk about how England, they backed off the minute they scored the goal. And I'm talking about that as well. They have this consistency, which is they're still getting far further than they ever used to get. When I was a kid, by consistently getting to the final of the Euros, and now that's two finals, the final match of the Euros, and now two semi-finals of the World Cup. That's unprecedented for England. I mean, Sir Alf Ramsey won the World Cup in 1966 and then finished third at the Euros in 1968, and that's the only time England have ever won a third, fourth place playoff. And this will be their third World Cup third place playoff, England, and they've lost the previous two. I think there's some merit to the fact that finishing third would be their second best finish. If that's not too confusing, it'd be their second best finish ever at a World Cup. That could maybe help them with a bit of momentum. You have to grind it out when you get to this level. When you get to hit a wall like this, just keep pushing forward inches, except if you're Cape Verde, your first ever World Cup, just go fucking crazy and totally enjoy yourself, set the world on fire. But usually you just have to get to a certain point, you have to persist and stick with it, and it's any little advantage you can gain. And I think if England could beat France, I think they need France to put the reserves out to field the reserve team. They're not likely to do that in Didier Deschamps' last match on Saturday. I think it could make them feel better about themselves, particularly going to a home Euros, effectively a home Euros. They've got a really strong chance of winning their only second major trophy since, well, just ever. You know, because England were nowhere near a World Cup final before 1966. Again, they were a quarter-final team. They got to quarter-finals in 54 and 62, perhaps. I could be wrong there. Like Scotland, they're very slow to get involved in the World Cup as well. Not interested in the 30s. England only getting involved in 1950, where we didn't get involved until 1954, although we could have. I know we could have gone in 1950, but we refused to because we hadn't won the home internationals. So honourable. But it's just unprecedented, really, this level of consistently being in the last four with England. It was eight, the last eight, if they were lucky, when I was not just a kid, but just for most of my life. So this could be a big thing for them to get through the but. Also, putting the blame on Thomas Tuchel, there is no doubt whatsoever that England shat it tactically in this game against Argentina the other night. A lot of talk about how after England scored the goal, they had 12% possession. There's not a lot of talk about it. It's just a stat. It's just correct. It is correct. And like the momentum graph that keeps popping up, it's like a new thing, a new a little gimmick in this World Cup, a little visual aid in this World Cup. I really like it, the momentum graph. And it's like a polygraph, isn't it? Pun intended. And sometimes it lies. Like most stats lies. It's kind of halfway between like a Rothko and a Jackson Pollock. You know, it's got far fewer colours. It's only got a couple of colours really involved, a bit like a Rothko. And there's a rectilinear thing in the frame and the line across the middle that's telling you it's the centre, the halfway line or whatever, when it divides the two teams into who's got the momentum. But the wavy patterns, no, that's a bit more Jackson Pollock all over the place, just slap and dash up and down. It looks like that. But it's like a kind of a polygraph that sometimes gets things wrong. Lies damn lies statistics. Sometimes when you see you see the momentum graph going up for these World Cup matches, you're thinking, yeah, that other team's got much more of the ball, but they don't look like they're going to do anything with it. It wasn't a lie in the second half on Wednesday night, that game between England and Argentina. But where the lie came in was people saying that that's England just went backwards after they'd scored the goal. It was the entire second half. Argentina went for England in the second half, football-wise. They went for them physically. Argentina showed England so much respect in the only way Argentina can show anybody respect, by fouling, gouging, basically trying to coach the referee. I mean, Messi is like carrying the referee off the pitch at half-time, coaching him, telling him what he wants to happen, what's not happening. And it's only Jude Bellingham that seems to... Harry Kane gets kind of involved, but Jude Bellingham is the only guy that realises for England. He's the only guy that gets it. He's the only guy that understands. In a really palpable way, in an obvious way. I don't just mean because he's world class. He's that kind of player, but the attitude. We saw this, Rangers supporters, when he played for Dortmund against us in that seminal game, one of the greatest Rangers games of my life. But in fact, both legs, the away leg, pound for pound, the greatest Rangers away performance I've ever seen in Europe, where we beat Dortmund, who had Erling Haaland in the score. They had Erling Haaland at that point in time, but not against us. It didn't, which is probably just as well for us. But we're 3-0 up against Borussia Dortmund in the Westfalen, and it's Jude Bellingham, a young guy from Birmingham City, that's given it, fuck this. Oh, and he's walking about slapping his teammates who are kind of like, oh, but we've got so much money and we're favourites for this turn. This Scottish mob are pumping us. They're terrified at the whole scenario. And he's just like, the scenario is the scenario. Fuck this. Let's get stuck into this. And he scores in the Westfalen, Jude Bellingham. It ends up 4-2, which is a bit less damaging for Borussia Dortmund. Then the 2 each game at Ibrox, they played us off the park for long periods, and Bellingham scores them in that game as well. World class. I mean, we just saw this guy up close, how brilliant he was. But the attitude as well. Get in there. I was telling people who really didn't want to hear it before the England-Argentina game that, like Paraguay in the game against France, I love the patriotism. I love the use of patriotism as a tool to just enjoy winning the game however you can do it. That was in reaction to a lot of Scotland fans starting to say, oh, Steve Clarke's got to be more attacking. We've got to play more positive football and what have you. And I'm thinking, no, he's got to play winning football. We've got to win, and we're not good enough to win any other way than by being largely negative at this point in time. And we'll take that just now. We would take that. I feel as if it was a real misunderstanding of what's required with the Scotland national team. But then I saw Paraguay against France, and the way they were like, once they've lost the game, they're going to try and break people's legs and get them get them suspended for the tournament in which the opposition is going to continue on in the tournament. But Paraguay are going home. That's horrible. The Gary and Argentina do a lot of that as well. I have expected they did it in the 2006 World Cup against Germany in Berlin after that quarter-final. It was horrendous, and it had ongoing effects for Germany. It probably cost them that World Cup. The post. After the fact, banning of Torsten Frings from the semi-final against Italy in particular. But I hate that. I'd rather burn down the game than actually... There's a misunderstanding, I think, of the whole Gary Player maxim. Show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. You don't want you don't want MD in your team. And you won't, when you get to that level of professional sport, you can't have people in your team who enjoy losing or don't care about losing. You can't get that far without a winning attitude. But a basically winning attitude, but this idea that you should just, it's used as a cover for people who just want to destroy the entire sport, take it beyond sport. I get sickened a lot of times, but the way you see like Portuguese, Spanish, Latin teams and Latin American teams in particular just deciding, now we've got beat, so it's no fair, looking for a reason to have their machismo offended so they can just go and attack people. And I was expecting that. And I think I was starting to think England are going to win this game. So prepare yourself, England, at the end of the game. Try not to get suspended. Try not to get involved in fights. Get off the pitch as quickly as possible. They'll attack you. They will physically attack you. Fair play to Argentina. They did that when they beat the Dutch in the semi-final, the last World Cup. So they take the risk themselves. But it wasn't. It was England. Jude Bellingham slaps one of the Argentina players because he said something in passing, and that's England were getting fucked in about Argentina as well in that first half. They just weren't quite as good at it. But they were getting in there, and it was a battle, and England were standing up to the battle. They were ready for the battle, and that's when I started thinking they've grown. They've got real tournament balls on them now. They've got that tournament experience. They get what's happening here. Because I really feared for England. It's like Scotland against Uruguay way back 40 years ago, 1986. The horrors that they put us through, they carried on in the tournament. I mean, they get pounded, or they get put out the next round, but they carried on in the tournament. We have yet to get out a first round group phase, and I always feel as if that's part of the problem. The street smarts, the team spirit, so to speak. And I'm kind of like to see England do that, because it always has a trickle-down effect to Scotland. We always end up, if the English can do it, we can do it, kind of thing. It's not so much true now because of the level of player they're producing, but we should learn our lesson from a neighbour that we've always given as good as we get with when we meet head to head. But it was good to see that England were standing up to them in that first half, and it was a horrible game of football. There was almost zero. But it was the first game in the history of the World Cup where there's been no shots on goal, or certainly on target in the first half hour of the game. This is England against Argentina, two of the 8 countries who have won the World Cup. And I thought, this is great. This is what England have to do. And then in the second half, Argentina just went for them football-wise. They must have let's just attack them football-wise. It wasn't after England scored 10 minutes into the second half. And just before they scored, England had a little chance from a slip-up from Argentina. And just after they scored, England had another chance from a kind of slip-up from Argentina. And both times, England looked like, no, we don't want to score that kind of goal because it's a World Cup semi-final. You're supposed to score, and the goal they scored, the goal England scored, we've gone down the wing, we've worked it, and we've got it across to the opposite side of the park, we've right across the front of the goals, and the other wingers come in, and he's tucked it in the bottom corner. That's a proper World Cup goal. That's us. A lot of the goal they scored against Italy in the final of Euro 2020, but it was like, we're only ready to do it properly, whereas Argentina are thinking, however, wherever, whenever, just get in, just take anything you can, score the goal off their backside, whatever, let's just get this done, because they know what it takes. They're not embarrassed by the fact they struggled against Cape Verde. So did Spain. You've got two teams meeting the final on Saturday who both drew over 90 minutes with Cape Verde. And Sunday, the final was getting played, quite a thing. Spain beat Austria 3-0. Argentina beat Austria 2-0 and missed a penalty. They're really, really well matched. But there's nothing, they're not bothered by the fact that they struggle at times, whereas England are still in that zone of thinking, what does it look like? I want to look like a team that wins a major tournament, because they're no used to being that. They only have a kind of facsimile, an idea of what it should look like, probably what it should feel like as well. Didn't feel like it. Argentina were going for England from the word go, and their game plan didn't work because England went 1-0 up. Argentina just doubled it, trebled it, just kept it going, and then you have the whole thing where England sat in. Yes, Thomas Tuchel takes the blame for that. The substitutions he made, but it was a wee while before he was making these substitutions. I think the biggest mistake Thomas Tuchel made was not taking off Harry Kane. Put on Ollie Watkins. I know it's been said all over the place. The rest is football on Netflix and stuff like that. I've watched a few things about it, but for me it was too much respect for Harry Kane, and I think it was the rest is football, which is on Netflix, and it's not very good. It's painful when they swear. Ali was on it as well. It's just, look, we're going to say fuck. It just doesn't suit you. Don't. This Ali McCoist and Gary Lineker, who both played under Jock Wallace, and you're thinking, would you try this with Jock? With Jock was in it? But it doesn't come across well. We're like, were we just shit? How the fuck did that happen? You can see them going, we're swearing, we can do this on Netflix. No, it's painful. But we're analysing things, and we're talking about the fact that I just thought, they're talking about not taking off Harry Kane, as a lot of commentators were, as the game, he was obviously getting knackered, and as Super Ali was saying, Harry Kane's no kind of counter-attacking centre forward. He instigates counter-attacks. He does know how to get on the end of a counter-attack, but he's not a guy who's going to drag you out from the edge of his own box while a team's right on top. And that kind of particular type of team is pinning them right in like that, and he's not getting any runners coming with him. He's not going to do it all on his own. He needs to lay it off to somebody. And he's got plenty of guys like that at Bayern Munich, and he'd Son at Tottenham to help him do that. But in this game, it just wasn't right. But I'm thinking, Gary Lineker sitting there, who I remember, of course, in Euro 92. It didn't do for Graham Taylor, but it was the beginning of the end for Graham Taylor, where they're going out to Sweden in the group stage of Euro 92. And they're trailing 2. They need an equaliser. And he's taken off Gary Lineker. It was Gary Lineker's last game for England. And this is probably Harry Kane's last World Cup game for England. Maybe his last game, full stop, you never know. On Saturday, if he plays against France, but that might be his last kind of chance to end in proper glory, the game against Argentina the other night. And I don't know if Tuchel's just thinking, I can't take him off. The same way that Gary Lineker, when he did get taken off against Sweden all those years ago, it was insult to injury. I don't know. But Tuchel also made some interesting comments about, I think basically he just, reading between the lines or patching together his comments when he took the job and after the game the other night, to suit myself, to suit my own agenda. I think he is that German forensic analytical thing where he knows there's big ideas about why England keep failing in Germany, because their rivalries with the Dutch, but they know that the English have a rivalry with them, a one-way rivalry with the Germans when it comes to international football, and they'll all have analysed it in Germany. They're just thinking, England don't believe enough. So he's thinking, I've got a team here who don't believe. I can't ask them to attack when Argentina are on top of them. I need them to get better at defending. They're not going to come for their DNA, isn't going to allow them to go forward. Whereas that's exactly what England had been doing in the first half. They were going forward just enough to stop Argentina getting forward. They were giving Argentina plenty to think about, and they didn't do it. England, they didn't. They just dropped right off. They didn't do it in the second half. Argentina, it was the fantastic tackle by Spence just after England had scored. He turned around and he's like, yes, well, that's good. That horrible thing, I find it horrible when defenders celebrate winning tackles. You know, it's to G yourself up and all that, but it was needed at that point, and it was like, we've just scored against you, and now the best tackle of the World Cup. You know, when even a Simeone doesn't try to get a free kick or a penalty as it would have been from that tackle, you know it's a brilliant tackle. I thought, that's great. You're properly psyched up now. They get forward again. Get down those wings where Argentina are struggling. And was it 2 centre-halves were on yellow cards? Go for them. They don't like you attacking them, Argentina. And Argentina were scared of England. They gave them that total respect until they smelt blood. As Scaloni talking about them being sharks who can smell the smallest piece of blood anywhere. And they went for it. When the New England were going to come out. You then had Pickford making a world-class save, a phenomenal save, and it's like, right, that's the moment. That's right, okay. By that point, Argentina were already getting too close. Fernandes had a shot that went just over the bar, and was that kind of, way, get it up, you, for the England fans. I see this all the time with Rangers, and that you're 1-0 up, big European game. The opposition's up the park, and there's a shot that goes maybe a yard or so over the bar, way, and you're thinking, that's them getting their sights in, that's them getting their sighters sorted. Plenty of the game to go, they're going to get closer, and Fernandes kept getting closer and closer. Everybody knows what the whole thing. We've all been talking about this. We've all been talking about it. Sorry, who do I think I am? I think I'm on I've watched so much World Cup football now on television that I think I'm on the panels at ITV and at BBC. But there's plenty of chat on mainstream media about how Messi is an on-field manager. He's walking a lot of the time, but he's sussing out what's going on, where is the space? This is the thing, where Messi will find the space. And the big thing on Wednesday night was he went out right. He went out to the right-hand side, and always, but he's more left-footed, isn't he? You know, he's going to be... and he gets the 2 assists. He gets the 2 assists for the 2 goals. Argentina scored a goal in 85th minute and the 92nd minute, and even with the reams of injury time you get in these World Cup games because of the water breaks, that still seems quite late. That's a late couple of goals. But within 2 minutes of England scoring, I'd said to my wife, and she just let it go over her head. I was like, is that right? Yeah. I says, Argentina are going to score. I actually said it'd be 2 minutes. They're going to score, and within 2 minutes of them equalising, they're going to go to... This isn't going to go to extra time. Turned out Wayne Rooney and Joe Hart. Good pundits, actually. Wayne Rooney and Joe Hart. Very good pundits when you listen to the content of what they're actually saying. They were saying the same thing. It's going to be 2 quick goals. It's not going to go to extra time. And England they can't have it going to extra time because they look dead on their feet. It's because they weren't getting up the park. But it turned out when they scored the equaliser, they took an hour and it took a minute and 40 seconds because I was watching to celebrate that goal. You know, but it was 7 minutes, so it seems really late. It seems that England were done right at the end, but it'd been coming from the very first whistle of the second half. Even with England going ahead 10 minutes into the second half, it had been coming for so long that when Argentina got those 2 goals, it just seemed, it didn't seem late. You know, it was not 7 minutes injury time to be played. I think it ended up going to about 102 minutes or something like that, all in. So it was about 10 minutes after England conceded the second goal for a chance to equalise, but they just couldn't get going at all. And if they had, Argentina looked ready to murder them in extra time. But they didn't go for it. They didn't go for it at all. We then had the vilification of the individual, and I thought it was really interesting that it's been really annoying throughout this World Cup, the focus on personality, the cult of personality. And a World Cup is about personalities, but we're actually getting the goal scoring rates at this World Cup, the performances of Michael Olise and Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi above all. Even the whole world's fallen in love with Erling Haaland, and he's 7 goals. He's second as I speak in the Golden Boot race. Norway going further than they've ever got in a World Cup. Cape Verde, everything Cape Verde did was sensational. There is plenty of personalities at this World Cup, but the American thing, it's American TV. Let's focus on these American sports stars that I don't even recognise, and lots of greats of the World Cup, Spanish and Brazilian players up in the stand. But Beckham, fixation with David Beckham, but the one thing that doesn't seem to have permeated for a lot of English analysts is this blaming of Tuchel, which, I mean, on the night, yeah, I think he got it totally wrong. I think he got it didn't get it totally wrong. First half was spot on. And then he gets the goal, they go a goal up, spot on. It's just the crucial bit, and people saying that's why he was brought in, because Gareth Southgate consistently got England to this point, semi-finals, final of the Euros, and just couldn't get it over the line. This is why Tuchel was brought in, and he's failed at it. Absolutely, 100% agree. But it's constantly seeing David Beckham should remind everybody about this cult of the individual England style. And I think we do the same thing in Scotland. That's why I'm also concerned with what happens with England. When you just find one easy blame. And I think in Scotland, it's like we actually praise ourselves. We're the greatest fans in the world, and are very slow to. I mean, John McGinn's adored, and Scott McTominay's also got his own song with the Scotland support and that. But I think it's more about us as a support. And then Steve Clarke, it's his fault. The guy who's got us to more tournaments than any other Scotland manager, it's his fault. He's no cheery enough. No wonder the team are not scoring enough goals or not playing positively enough. If everybody would just get behind us to do what we can at World Cup, we could go out there and play 11 behind the ball and 0-0 and penalties our way through the entire fucking tournament. And it would be the greatest thing that's ever happened in this country in terms of football. But no, it has to be his fault, because that's something easy. It's the tourists, I think, that come in. People who aren't interested in going to Hampden for Nations League games against Albania and, Malta and what have you. These are the people who are suddenly interested in football when Scotland get to major finals, and then I've got these half-arsed opinions that are just totally damaging and dominate the media attention round about the people that we need to stay in the job, because they're better at it than anybody else has been for the last 30 years. So I think the same thing, when you watch David Beckham, I remember, and it's like England against Argentina, and there's a Simeone on the pitch the other night as well, Diego's son, and that whole thing in 1998 is like fucking Princess Di, his storyline, David Beckham, except for the bit where she dies. And I've got to the stage, which I would be with Di just now as well, with Diana. If she hadn't left Charles, probably, if she was queen, I'd probably find her a pain in the arse or something like that. Camilla, it's hard to watch, isn't it? When you know what's happened, and she was having an affair with him. Well, it's hard to watch her being queen. You know, my queen is what she is, really. But it's David Beckham has got to that point with Victoria Beckham. But in the 1998 World Cup, I just felt heart sorry for him. I felt absolutely heart sorry for him. He was forced to apologise to the nation because his sending off against, and you could hear the collective decision made by the English press pack in Saint Etienne, and Mick Jagger was in the crowd in Saint Etienne in 1998, and there he was the other night. Who was that game played the other night? Was it Dallas? Can't remember. He was at that game the other night as well, so he's obviously the jinx. As somebody said, John Stones was injured, and he's rolling about in the park. He's rolling, a Rolling Stones pun there straight away, but David Beckham has the wee flick out at Simeone, and they'd obviously done the Argentina or cheats thing to death in the media in 1986, and here we were. I mean, it's 12 years later, but it was still it's too recent, so we can't do that again. Another Diego cheating for Argentina. Oh, let's make it about Beckham being stupid enough to lash out. And he had to apologise to the nation, an official apology. I think they were about to bring back a death penalty for him, and he gets slagged fucking rotten at every English ground. He went to every club ground. He went to Man United after that, and it was absolutely horrific. For going out and playing football and just react, I mean, it was a wee flick. It was pathetic. It was it was a lack of discipline, if you like. It was a bit petulant, but Diego Simeone's crime was far greater as far as I was concerned. It was just looking for a scapegoat, and then Beckham comes back, and by the time he's got them, was it Euro 2004, where he scores not can he be, because Greece were World Cup, where I think the following World Cup where he's scoring against Greece at Old Trafford with the last minute free kick. He's got the whole of England eating out his hand, and he's always he's apologising for what he did that day in Saint Etienne, and he just, instead of getting mad and telling everybody to fuck off, he just went, nah, I'm going to make you bastards. I think Princess Diana did the same thing. She just decided, okay, he's a fucking pervert's taking photographs of me with my see-through skirt and all that kind of stuff. I didn't realise the sun was behind me, and I'll make sure you're all pay. And she's the queen of our hearts and all that. She gets her triumph, but it doesn't. But I think Beckham has just kept his going. But it should have reminded folk the constant close-ups of him on television during this World Cup, be careful with the blaming the individual thing, because you'll find out it's usually the wrong individual you're blaming for a start. They did it with Gareth Southgate. They got obsessed with him at Euro 2000. They're throwing beers, they're throwing plastic drinks containers at him after they've qualified for, was it the semi-final or the knockout stage at the last Euros and all that. It was fucking disgusting. This is the fans as well. That's the guy who's getting you further than you've ever got in the Euros before. Your two best ever finishes at the Euros, and you're abusing the guy because what? Because you don't like it. Because you can't. Because you think that you should be able to go into a tournament, get further than you've ever got before, and then be brilliant while doing it. Doesn't happen. It's always by inches, that kind of stuff. So I think you need to be careful about how much they're going to lay into Thomas Tuchel. But I pretty much, I cannot stand Gabriel Clark, what he did after they beat Norway. England, I haven't spoke to you since then. That was, it was good to see, I think, Joe Hart talking about it, disagreeing with it. I think Wayne Rooney as well, and also Thierry Henry doing it in kind of more dramatic terms for American telly to an English anchor. But Gabriel Clark's interview post-match, the super flash interviews that they've got in this World Cup for this purpose, to create controversy. You saw there something I've always hated about Gabriel Clark, and I do hate it. The guy's making a living, whatever, but it's nothing to do with an analysis of football that's going to help the team. It's just to make sure there is controversy, and it's usually working against the very team that he's purporting to support. When he asks Tuchel about the game against England have won, and Tuchel's going to defend his team when they lose and slag them when they win. And that was discussed in the ITV studio, and that afterwards were referencing even Alex Ferguson's rant after the 1983 Scottish Cup final, which I was that. It was my second Scottish Cup final. We just lost after extra time to Aberdeen. So thanks Mark Pugac for bringing that up. I'm trying to enjoy the World Cup, but you should slag your team only when they won, because it sounds like sour grapes when you lose and you're throwing the team under the bus. So this is what had happened, and Tuchel was really angry, obviously planning ahead for the semi-final against Argentina. And he was right. England were terrible at times against Norway. Some of that may have been his substitutions as well, or one substitution in particular. But they got the job done. You know, it's still quite rare for England to get to a semi-final. They got the job done, and he's saying after, they were terrible. Technically they were awful and all that. And Gabriel Clark is raging, because Gabriel Clark is looking. He's constantly trying to make his interviewee raging. He's trying to wind them up, trying to get something controversial. And here it was being offered to him in a way that everybody could see he wasn't expecting. So he's not in charge. It's about him being in charge. It's about him being the man. He wants to tell his producers, he wants to tell the watching public that he's got this out of somebody. No, he's been offered it for free. So he starts out, what you're agent? What was the problem? Is it a mentality thing? And that's the fucking first thing. Is stupid football fans like myself and stupid pundits. What we go for? Is it a character thing? Is it a mentality thing? And it is. And when it comes to tournament savvy, but he's like, no, that was pure mentality. And Gabriel Clark can't cope with that. That doesn't compute for him, because he has no subtlety of thinking. You know, the attitude, because you were technically crap, you're making the wrong footballing decisions. To get through a quarter-final extra time like that against a decent team like Norway, obviously your mentality is even better, because everybody's bumming up Argentina's mentality. They're struggling against Cape Verde. They're struggling against Switzerland. You know, but they get the job done. You know, did they struggle against in the group stage? They gubbed Algeria, quite comfortable against Austria, but I think they had a wee struggle against, who else was in that? I'll give it to anyway. I can't even remember who was in the other team in that group for Argentina. That's terrible. I've got a wee chart here in front of me. It was Jordan. They beat them 3-1, which is a bit of a struggle, you know, for Argentina. But they've not been great, terrifically great, but they get through it. So that's what that's what Tuchel was saying when they came to beat Norway. Got the job done. The mentality is fantastic. It's all mentality to get to this point. And Gabriel Clark's like, this guy's making mincemeat of me. He's giving me what I want, but it's no me that's in charge of this interview. And that's what's always said, the egomaniac. So at the end of it, Gabriel Clark, who is always trying to get a rise out of people, he says to Thomas Tuchel, right, well, try and enjoy it. Try and enjoy it. He's telling him to enjoy it, telling him to cheer up, telling him, just because he needs to be seen to be telling him something. It's fucking disgusting. It's horrible to watch. And then the prick then goes straight to, and Tuchel was saying in his interview to Gabriel Clark, the players should enjoy this. They should celebrate this. They really should. We'll just have to make sure that we straighten a few things out, the technical things before the semi-final match. Gabriel Clark doesn't mention that, but when he goes to interview Jude Bellingham, who's cocky and just the game was just finished, he's that kind of character, Jude Bellingham, and he says, "Oh, your manager's saying it's not good enough. You're disappointing." Ah, well, fair enough. So there's a bit of a kind of a reaction to Thomas Tuchel, but it's not a true reaction because it's what's been reported about Thomas Tuchel by an insidious character like Gabriel Clark, and then we get the same thing after the semi-final defeat. So that's friction there straight away, or a Rami trying to be creative. It was good to see a lot of ex-pros coming out and saying, "Nah, that's bogus. I didn't understand the question," says Thierry Henry from Gabriel Clark. Quite right to Thomas Tuchel. But then we get Kelly Summers, who I think she's terrible. She's absolutely horrible as well. Same school as Gabriel Clark. There's a determination to seem you're totally in charge of the interview, but to the point where you are holding this person to account for some crime almost. They're just playing football for their country. And so they've lost. Thomas Tuchel has lost this game against Argentina, and she knows. Like I'm just been saying for most of this podcast, it was Thomas Tuchel's fault, really tactically, perhaps, in that semi-final. But she gets him to say no regrets. But I'm sure I need to watch it back. I need to double check myself here. But I'm sure she's saying, "And you think I've done better or whatever," and he's kind of saying no, and he's getting a bit ratty, saying, everybody's a bloody expert, aren't they, when it comes to how to get through to a World Cup. He's probably had enough of her. It's just a terrible time for these interviews to take place when everything's so raw. And she says, "So no regrets then, Thomas." And then I've watched, she summed it up as no regrets, and I think he eventually gets pushed into saying no regrets in reply to her. But it then goes, I'm watching other podcasts, that Tim Vickery with, what's his name, Henry Winter and all that, and they're saying, I'm just seeing that Tuchel's just said he's got no regrets about that, how he's played that game. It's horrible. It's horrible how they're actually getting rid of the very people who might end up being the very people they need. Tuchel's going to learn from this, but maybe he's going to get sacked. Maybe he's going to get done in. He's certainly going to get a hard time because England are now in that situation where most games they play are not a semi-final of a major tournament. And it's not until he wins the semi-final of the Euros, and probably even then, they've been in the last two finals of the Euros, and the women's team have won both the last two finals of the Euros for England, that he'll get a chance to redeem himself, and even then, it's in England. And I could see people the other night after England lost this semi-final saying, we've got the Euros coming up, but never won the Euros, but always getting a bit snobby about it. So England find themselves in the third, fourth place playoff, and that's nobody wants to be there. What's the point of the third, fourth place playoff? I'll tell you the point of the third, fourth place playoff. All I do is stats, as you know, folks. A whole lot of stats. I don't do it. That's not all I do. I'm just giving you a really in-depth discussion on tactics and the way to manage yourself to finally getting over that hurdle of becoming a world champion. Again, in England's case, only 8 teams have ever won the World Cup. That's the thing you need to... I'm counting Germany as the same as West Germany because the DFB, the Deutscher Fußballbund, just subsumed all of East German football, the Oberliga and whatever. They just subsumed it, kind of sucked it. And I drink your milkshake, and I think they sucked all that in the same way like the German Federal Republic just subsumed the DDR. It wasn't a reunification, it was a unification. It was just a kind of, no, that's just, we'll take all this in now. You're part of us now. So it's the same organisation. It's the same. It's not the same organisation like the German team that took part in I think it was Greater Germany in the 1934 World Cup, and Nazi Germany, openly Nazi Germany in the 1938 World Cup. Not different from that. After the post-Second World War, German Federal Republic, the Deutscher Fußballbund, it's the same organisation that's won all their World Cups and got to all the major finals before or after the Berlin Wall coming down. So only 8 countries have ever won the World Cup. It's a hell of a thing. And one of the reasons I hate or need the third, fourth place playoff is for clarity. Because this is the 23rd World Cup played, but there's only been... This will only be the 21st third place match taking place. There's only been 22. And Sunday will only be the 22nd World Cup final because, of course, in 1950 they had that whole thing where it wasn't a semi-final. It wasn't 2 semi-finals and a final or a third, fourth place match. It was the last four teams went into a group and they all played each other, and it just so happened, it worked out quite fortunately, that in the last round of groups in that group, the last round of games in that group stage, the only two teams who could win it, Brazil and Uruguay, faced each other in the Maracana. The only two teams who couldn't win it and still hadn't sorted out who was third and fourth were meeting, and I don't know where they played that game. I don't know where that game was played. Sorry about that. But they played each other in the last round of group games as well. So you had effective final and third place match, and it was Spain and Sweden who played in the third, fourth place match, unofficial in that World Cup. But Brazil only required a draw. Everybody knows Brazil only required a draw to win the World Cup in their final match of the 1950 World Cup. And they're playing against Uruguay, who'd only played, this was only Uruguay's fourth game in that World Cup. Uruguay's first round group was just them in Bolivia, and they beat Bolivia 8-0. And the great thing about that, and that was them in the semi-finals, which was a group stage. So it was straight after the Second World. It was the first World Cup after the Second World War. A lot of countries had a few problems a bit of a mess to clean up. They couldn't really afford to get themselves over to Brazil for that one. So the group stage was a bit uneven. There was some 4-team groups and there was a 3-team group, and that group with just Uruguay and Bolivia, one match. And the great thing about that World Cup was Brazil scored the first goal, only required a draw in their final game against Uruguay in front of 173,000, 178,000, I think was the official crowd, but it was closer to 210,000 was the crowd in the Maracana on the 16th of July, 1950, the Maracanazo. And Brazil went 1-0 up in the 47th minute. I think Friaca scored, Albino Friaca. He scored the first goal of that game. Brazil go 1-0 up, only need a draw. There's been a song composed already, Brazil the victors. Fantastic. This is it. It's finally happened. They hadn't won the World Cup before, Brazil, but they knew that they would. They knew they were the greatest team in the world. But Uruguay had won the World Cup before, 20 years earlier. And that's a tournament experience. Even just knowing that you have won a World Cup is a hell of a thing. And they come back and they won 2. Just like England, keep going a goal up in these big semi-finals and finals in the last few years, last 8 years, and they can't quite get it over. They feel the fear, and it's the same thing with Brazil in that game. They went 1-0 up, and then the fear just set in. All that is required is now they've got something to lose. All that's required is an equaliser. And, Juan Schiaffino and Alci Giga got those goals for Uruguay, and they were crying at the end, not with joy, but because just what was going on around about them. People killed themselves. Not in the ground, I don't think, but there was suicides because of this. It's just when there's 210,000 people just distraught. There was no away support in those days. It was too early for that shit. Apparently it was traumatising for the Uruguayans who'd won the bloody thing. They just won. They're lifting the Jules Rimet going, Jesus, get us out of here. This is awful. So they won that World Cup, but they think they made it so much worse. The reason Brazil only required a draw. I think Uruguay drew one of their games. They beat Spain or Sweden by the odd goal. It was a 3-2 win. I think they might have actually drawn their other game, whereas Brazil had won 6-1 and 7-1 against, say, Sweden, and 6-1 against Spain. They'd won their other two games 6-1 and 7. They were just banging in goals for fun, and they get to the final, and they just get tight. They just can't do it at all. So Brazil, their penultimate game in that World Cup. They won. Was it? Basically, they won 7-1, and the only other time Brazil hosted the World Cup in 2014, they get beat 7-1. They get beat. The Germans beat them 7-1, and that was the last time Germany had, until this World Cup, was the last time Germany had got out the group stage. Was when they won the World Cup in 2014, and they beat a Portuguese-speaking team 7-1. This summer, I'm sure Curaçao, it's a kind of Creole form of Portuguese that they talk in Curaçao, and they beat the Portuguese-speaking team 7-1 and get out the group stage for the first time since 2014. But yeah, didn't go much further on that, thanks to Paraguay. But it's this is why I feel as if that's very untidy. It wasn't, so you can't talk about the thing, because I have this thing I was saying. With Spain getting through to the final and England not getting through to the final this summer, that means it's only for 16 years that Spain shared the boast or the stat with England of having won their only World Cup final. Now Spain will play a second World Cup final, but they had been the team that had won their only World Cup final. But people would say to you, no, but what about Uruguay? Because Uruguay won it in 1930 and 1950, but 1950 it wasn't a final. It was a final game, but it wasn't a final. So they've done it. So it's really stuff like that's confusing. And what's happened with the third place playoff is in 1930, that very first World Cup, they didn't have the third place playoff in place then. They didn't have one. That's the only time. Well, they didn't have one in 1950 either. But they didn't do anything to sort out who was going to finish third, who had finished third in that World Cup in 1930. And so I would look at it as a kid, and by God, I did look at this as a kid. Because you'd get world charts. You'd always get your world charts every 4 years, and something I just look through my wee football annuals and things like that, and go through the stats, who won it, and see that there was no third place team for 1930, and think, well, who get beat hardest in the semi final? They'll be fourth. But it turned out it was Yugoslavia and the USA. Uruguay were in there as well. The U's, or the U sounds, but they both lost 6-1. Argentina beat the USA 6-1 in their semi-final, and Uruguay beat Yugoslavia 6-1 in their semi-final. So I used to think to myself, well, Uruguay won the World Cup, so the team that lost to them, Yugoslavia, will say that they finished third, whereas the other one got beat 6-1. It's the exact same score, you couldn't even say. But then 1986, probably sucking up the arse of the States, FIFA come in, because the States are going to host it in 1994. FIFA came in and just decided retrospectively that USA had finished third because their goal difference across the whole tournament was better than Yugoslavians. So that's always annoyed me. As I say, a tournament of the heft, the greatest tournament on earth, the World Cup, I think we should find out who's third and who's fourth. The problem is you don't really, because a lot of times teams will just field the reserve teams or the guys who hadn't had a game so far and all that, and they can't be bothered getting into it, so they're not really properly trying, but I think they should. You've also got, let's say, England, if they can finish third, well, that's their second best ever performance at a World Cup. It's their best performance at a World Cup outside 1966. It'll be the first time in 3 attempts that they've won the third place playoff. In the history of I think it's a good thing going forward, but it has to be said, the history of the third place playoff, only twice have the winners of the third place playoff gone on to win the following World Cup. And both times that was Germany, and both times they beat Uruguay. Then Germany beat Uruguay in the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, the fourth place playoff, and they won the 74 World Cup in home soil. And then in 2010 in South Africa, they beat Uruguay in the fourth place playoff and went on to win the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. That's the only time, it's the only country that's ever done it. It's the only times it's ever happened. 5 different teams, other than the USA, finished third officially according to FIFA retrospectively in the 1930 World Cup, never reached the World Cup final. And I'm quite happy, I suppose, that USA finished third in that World Cup, the first one ever, because of a Scottish manager and the team is full of Scottish players. It's the best, you could say it's the best performance by Scotland ever at a World Cup. But thereafter, the third, fourth place playoff, even taken in the unofficial one in 1950, 5 times it's been won by a side who've yet to reach the World Cup final, who still haven't reached the World Cup final. Turkey, 2002. Turkey beating South Korea in the third, fourth place playoff. And of course, the other thing, it's the stats that can happen. The things that can happen in that game. It's an official part of the World Cup because is it Hakan Şükür, the guy's name was? He scores the fastest ever goal. And people say, what's the fastest ever goal scored at World Cup finals? I don't know if it's been overtaken since then, but in 2002, Hakan Şükür has got it in 0.4 seconds at the start of the game against South Korea. So that's a World Cup record that's set that wouldn't have been set if that game hadn't taken place, if you know what I mean. It's part of the World Cup. But Turkey won that in 2002, and that's staying Turkey. That's probably quite happy. That was their first ever World Cup semi-final. The only time they've been in the semi-finals. They finished third. They're third at the World Cup. What a boast that is. And then they'd like get it up, you Greece, because the Turks hate the Greeks, and then the Greeks go and win Euro 2004. These things have a knock-on effect. If you finish third, you get it's a great boast. Your neighbours are like, right, fuck that, next spires, let me do something even better. Austria, they won the 1950 54 third place playoff, beating Uruguay. Great football nation, never won the World Cup. Belgium, 2018, they lost it in 1986. Belgium to France, third place playoff, but they also reached the semi-finals, of course, in 2018, and they beat England in the third, fourth place playoff. I think it was in St. Petersburg. So they've never been in a World Cup final. Portugal, 66. Eusebio scoring against the Soviet Union at Wembley, and that was Portugal finishing third in that World Cup. They also lost, I think, 2006 World Cup. They lost to Germany. Is that the only time Portugal might have got to another semi-final? Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know, but I've still never played in the World Cup final, Portugal, but they've finished third, so they know exactly what's the best they've ever done in the World Cup. They've never won the thing. And Poland twice. Poland twice have 1982. They beat the French in Alicante. The French definitely did rest all their best players in that Spain 82, the World Cup third place playoff, and in 1974, they beat Brazil. I think it was in Munich. I think it was the day before the final, the third, fourth place playoff. They beat Brazil, who were the great Brazil 70 team, the holders, and Poland beat them to third place in the playoff. And in that game, I don't know if Gregor Lato scored in that game, but Gregor Lato was setting himself up as the golden boot, the last guy to score more than 6 goals in a World Cup up until Ronaldo of Brazil, the phenomenon in 2002. And since then, 2002, nobody scored more than 5 or 6 has been the tally for the Golden Boot winner since then. So it's an amazing World Cup we've got just now, but that's quite a significant thing. There's also a wee start for you. Wee quiz question. 2 SPL players, 2 SPL legends at their SPL clubs, neither of whom are very friendly with Rangers, who played on opposite sides in a World Cup third, fourth place playoff. This is the thing about the World Cup. We know Rangers supporters, Gattuso and Stefan Guivars, the only guys to play for Rangers that had won the World Cup. You get Janino at Celtic. It's quite a thing. It really affects. It's a massive thing to have somebody who's actually won a World Cup. Won a World Cup even before or after he's played for your club, to be associated with your club. It's a hell of a thing. It's a massive effect, the World Cup. So I think we really should find out who finishes in third. But we've got a situation just now with the Golden Boot, which is something else I have to talk to you about. I'm going to segue it in with the third, fourth place match. You've got Mbappe and Messi out there on their own little island on 8 goals each in the Golden Boot stakes at this moment in time. Now Messi's got bigger things to concern himself with, but you can be damn sure he's thinking about greatness. This is probably going to be his last World Cup, but I wouldn't write him off the way he's playing just now. I would not write him off for the next one. But Mbappe looks like he's got another couple of World Cups in him at least, so he'll probably catch Messi on the all-time scorers list. He's going to eventually be top dog when it comes to goals scored over all World Cups. Messi top of that little chart just now, but I think Mbappe maybe wants to try and claim the Golden Boot in this one, and you feel that Mbappe's got a better chance of scoring a hat-trick against England than Messi has of scoring one against Spain, although just don't write the wee man off for anything at all. So that's it's a chance to claim the Golden Boot. You've also got Erling Haaland in his own little island, 7 goals. Valhalla, he's away, he's gone. That's it, he's fine. And then next, you've got Bellingham and Kane, the 2 England stars, 6 goals each, their own little 6 goals island. So, if Mbappe decides he can't be asked but they get sent off early doors, you've got Bellingham and Kane. I've got a chance to go out there, a hat-trick for either of them. They could secure the gold. But Harry Kane could become the first guy ever to win the Golden Boot at 2 different World Cups. Nobody's ever won it twice. He's got a chance to do that. An outside chance now. He scored a hat-trick against France, but you never know. You never know what the French attitude's going to be. I think the fact that it's Didier Deschamps' last game, they're probably going to go for it, and they'll probably want to get the Golden Boot as well. But you never know. That's a chance that's significant. But also below that, you've got Oyarzabal, who's going to be playing the final on Sunday, and Ousmane Dembele, who'd never scored a goal in the World Cup finals until this summer. He scores a hat-trick against Norway. Asgard scores in the same game. Just lovely to be there by association. And there's Dembele gets a hat-trick in that game, and then he's got 5 goals altogether. So he could, if he scored, he'd need to score 4 goals, though, and Mbappe to be injured or red-carded or something early doors for him to finish his Golden Boot. Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that Argentina against Spain could be low scoring. Spain don't score too many goals, but they don't concede many. They've only conceded 1 goal so far in this World Cup. So there's a chance that Argentina won't score a lot of goals, and say Mbappe need him to get an injury or a red card or something. But Dembele could go there. If he scored 4 goals, that's ridiculous. Like, a Frenchman's not going to score 4 goals in the third place playoff to finish top scorer in the World Cup, except for the fact that that's the greatest ever Golden Boot in the history of the World Cup, and it wasn't even called the Golden Boot back then. The only guy to get 13 goals. Yeah, it's shot behind me. And get the 13 on it. Just Fontaine, who was born in Marrakesh, actually Moroccan. And that's a bit different relationship with France in those days. It was coming to an end officially, the French ownership of Morocco back then, but he was born in Marrakesh and he ends up playing for Reims in one of their 2 European Cup finals that Reims lost in the 1950s. But it's, you've got Mbappe scored. If he scored 5 goals, he needs to score 5 goals now in this fourth place playoff to equal Just Fontaine's record. But he's beaten Just Fontaine's record as being the Frenchman who scored the most goals in a World Cup. He did that this World Cup because those 13 goals that Just Fontaine scored, it's the most anybody's ever scored in a single edition of the World Cup finals. And the other thing, I'm just going to throw this in here as well. If you're the same age as me, when you were a schoolboy, you knew that Jairzinho was the only guy who'd ever scored in every match of the World Cup finals. By that, we meant all the group stage games and then all the knockout games, including the final. And I believed that for years. And he scored. There was only 6 games in the World Cup in 1970 when Jorginho did it. He scored in all the group games, the only goal of the game against England in the group game. And then he scores in the quarter-final against Peru, semi-final against Uruguay, and the final against Italy. But I found out later, Just Fontaine had done the same thing. But just France had lost in the semi-finals to Brazil. Pelé scoring a hat-trick. They'd lost to Brazil in the semi-finals at Sweden in 1958. But Just Fontaine then scored 4 goals in that third place playoff. That's what I'm talking about. The third place playoff against the Germans. The Germans had lost an angry semi-final to the Swedes in Gothenburg, and they were the holders as well at that point, West Germany. But Just Fontaine scores 4 goals in that game. So that's the final as far as I'm concerned. That's a game you've played after the semi-final. You've played every round, because the thing that nobody wants to acknowledge is that the third, fourth place playoff is the same round as the final. It's a round that comes after the semi-finals, where they like it. Also, Paul Merson on Sky wearing his England 80s top the other night, just going on about losing the semi-final, how gutted he was, and he's saying, well, what's the point of a third, fourth place playoff? That's a nightmare. I used to hate losing the FA Cup semi-finals. That was the worst. If losing the FA Cup final, it's bad, but losing the semi-final was the worst. You not even got to the final, so you wouldn't want to play a third, fourth place playoff after that. Well, they used to. I think Arsenal might have played one. It was 1970 to 1974. There was a great When Saturday Comes article about it a few years ago. I always remember this, but not in any great detail. But in England, they did for a while, because the FA Cup's got used to have such heft in England back in the 20th century. It was almost more important in the eyes of the English public than winning the English League title. They introduced a third, fourth place playoff for the losing semi-finalists, and we played at Highbury or Selhurst Park or something. I think eventually the crowds were pretty paltry, so they cancelled it after 4 or 5 attempts at it. But I used to have a third place playoff for that. But I feel as if it's something that has to be played. So Dembele could go in; he scored 5 goals in this, and I feel as if France had played. And Just Fontaine had scored in every round of the World Cup as well. It's a legitimate round of the World Cup. You only get there by getting to the semi-final. Once you're in the semi-finals, you've got 2 games left, no matter win or lose your semi-final. And Just Fontaine had 9 goals getting into that game against the Germans in 1958. And at that point, Sandor Kocsis of Hungary, in the previous World Cup, had scored 11. And he was the only guy ever to hit double figures in a World Cup. He scored 11. So he's well behind him. He's two goals behind him. And I didn't realise until this week, I read an article that said, maybe I did know it and I'd forgotten about it, that Just Fontaine knocked back a penalty. There was a chance to take a penalty. France won 6-3 against the Germans in that game. And Fontaine scores 4 goals, takes them on to 13. Nobody's ever scored more. I thought it was under threat, this record, during this World Cup. But he knocked back a penalty as well. It could have been 14. He knocked back the chance to take a penalty. He scored against Scotland. Only scored 1 goal against us, in that World Cup in '58. The Just Fontaine. So it'd just be quite a thing. I thought, as I say, like Messi and maybe Haaland, Kane as well, the top dogs with the goal scoring in this World Cup, they were getting so many goals so early. I thought this is going to go. This is going. The 13 of Just Fontaine is under threat, and they're only playing 2 games more. When you think that with just 1 game more than Just Fontaine would have played in that World Cup for years and years, nobody could get past 6. Sometimes it was only 5. It was before Fontaine, I think it was 62 World Cup, and just after Just Fontaine, I think it was about 55 players tied on 4 goals or something at the 1962 World Cup in Chile. But it's in Chile. Sorry, Chile is one of the countries who won the 3rd, 4th place playoff. Who didn't go on to ever reach the World Cup final. I don't think I mentioned them either. Austria, Chile, Poland, Belgium, Turkey, and USA didn't play in an actual playoff, but they finished 3rd. So it's 6 nations, I think. So it was quite a thing to see these guys banging in these goals so early, but then neither Messi nor Dembele scored in the quarterfinals, did they? And then neither of them have scored in the semi-finals, although Messi goes in there and helps himself to the leading spots in the Golden Boot race because he's got a couple of assists as well. The assists now count as a tiebreaker if the number of goals scored by leading scorers are level. But it'd be quite a thing because that number 13 jersey, that is a replica of the jersey that was worn by Gerd Müller in the 1970 World Cup finals. It's got the little air holes in it because it was so hot, and in Mexico that was quite technologically advanced at the time in 1970. Number 13, Der Bomber, that's his number. Gerd Müller, for so many years, the guy who scored more World Cup finals goals than anybody else, but over 2 tournaments, as opposed to Just Fontaine, who had got 13, that very number. And then Just Fontaine gets it by scoring 4 goals in the 3rd, 4th place playoff. Gerd Müller against Uruguay in Mexico doesn't he score? That's the only game he doesn't score in, so he can't get past Fontaine's record. Wolfgang Overath, I think, scored the only goal against Mexico in that 1970 World Cup 3rd place match. But he's got 13 in his back, and that's a tally. And Gerd Müller is the last guy, the last man to score double figures. Only 3 men have ever scored double figures in the World Cup. A World Cup, and the last one was Gerd Müller. Sandor Kosic in 54, Just Fontaine in 58, and Gerd Müller with 10. You only got 10, the least of the 3 of them in one World Cup in 1970. So you've got a chance, you've got 2 chances, 3, 4 chances if you like this weekend, multiple chances for somebody to become only the 4th player ever to hit double figures at a World Cup. I hope that happens. There's other things I've got to say about the 3rd, 4th place playoff. What makes it great, those kind of stats, the fact that it has to get, I want to find out who's 3rd and who's 4th. I want them everything placed in an order of achievement. There'll be something else that I've totally missed out. I just think it's a festival of football like this. You can't just let it disappear without tidying up all the kind of loose ends, and then we'll get the final. We'll get the final on. But between guys who don't have massively strong managerial records, you look at the 2 managers, and I think that's the point that England should take on board, like personality manager, a good club manager, a guy who's won the Champions League, like Thomas Tuchel, managed at the very top level in the club scene. But De La Fuente, hasn't he? De La Fuente's managed all the underage levels, the Spain national team, and a few Spanish clubs that you have, I guarantee you've never heard. I'd never heard of them. You've never heard of them. Not even like Alaves, that it's the local rivals to Alaves, who aren't even their rivals, kind of like the Queen's Park to Celtic, the Partick Thistle to Rangers. That's too offensive, sorry, to Partick Thistle. But teams that have never really been heard of outside of Spain, maybe even outside the Basque region. And the same, it was West Ham and Lazio and that he played for, Scaloni of Argentina, but his management career, I think he was assistant manager a couple of places, and then he's at a few underage teams. He only played a handful of times for the Argentinian national team, but in he goes, and it's just working. And I think it's because Messi's in control. That whole thing where Scaloni was following the French model. When you get into management, he thought France was the way to go, and he tried that when he first took over at Argentina. No, it's teamwork, and it's the individual, it's Messi. And I think England, the answer is somewhere between Gareth Southgate and letting Jude Bellingham take over. There's that. It's such a short time you've got with a team at international level. They've got to develop that kind of club thing, that kind of club bond, that familiarity. But also, there's not a lot of time for magical, for a lot of really in-depth tactics. So you've got to have that kind of belief, that kind of bastard edge about you that Jude Bellingham's got. And I think there's a really interesting thing. They were asking Patrick Vieira on the Rest is Football podcast about what happened with France in 1998, because as I was growing up, France could not win. They couldn't get to the World Cup final. They could not get to the final. They hadn't been in the World Cup final until they got to the final in 98 on home soil. And of course, you had the whole thing in the final with Ronaldo, the phenomenon, not being properly fit, or having a collapse in the dressing room and all that, blah, blah, blah. That definitely, but France smelt blood at that point. And France had won the Euros in '84, so they had something, they knew they were capable, especially on home soil. But I think something that Patrick Vieira wouldn't have mentioned to Gary Lineker or whatever, I can't help thinking it's been true with Gareth Southgate getting England back to being regular semi-finalists and finalists. Yeah, there is a lot of luck at the draw as well. They do get, and they got Norway acting as a bit of a sweeper for them, putting out Brazil. So England are capable of beating, much more capable of beating Norway than they are of beating Brazil. Even Ancelotti's Brazil. And I think actually England are much more capable of beating Spain than they are of beating France. So it's a fucking massive opportunity they've missed here. They might never get it back. But I think it's black players. I think it's young black men. The prevalence, they experience racism. Let's just they experience racism when they're growing up. It's maybe not as bad now once they get to the top level. And in the stadiums, there's a kind of a general eradicating. It's not been eradicated at all, and we saw that with scumbags like Boris Johnson in charge, telling people that taking the knee was a sign of weakness and stuff. This is fucking hell, horrible, disgusting stuff. They're not being helped at all. But young black guys are just used to feeling like outsiders. Whereas I think when I was growing up, it was mostly white players. It's a rare thing to see a black fella playing for England. And we certainly don't have it in Scotland. Very few black players ever played for Scotland, although they have done with great distinction. But I'm getting right back in the start of history here. I'm not going to get into all that. But I feel as if when I was growing up, it was white guys are kind of thinking, well, we're part of this whole thing of England being a bit superior at football, inventing the game. We're all in it together. And then they would find the crowds are turning on them. And the crowd, no, you're fucking shit. Get to it. But we're want to do this, we'll try to do this together. And whereas if you're a young black player, you don't expect anything from crowds. You don't expect anything from crowds of drunk white men. You're kind of getting out there, almost kind of tuning it out a wee bit, and it ends up when they're missing penalties in England's first ever Euros final. They end up getting horrific streams of racist abuse, and it's fucking disgusting. That's why I've got a lot of sympathy for England and their players as well as the media, the self-defeating media round about them. But I feel as if that's a big thing with France. You get players who are just like, yeah, we're kind of outsiders anyway, society, even though we're totally welcomed because we've now won a World Cup and stuff like that. But it's never been that easy for us. We don't expect a lot from crowds of white people mostly. So on we go. We've got that kind of built-in defence method. It's just bullshit barroom psychology there. But I feel as if that's a part of it. And Jude Bellingham just doesn't give a fuck. Does not give a fuck. And I think that's what England need to do. You saw the way Argentina went at them in that last, particularly, I mean, it was the whole second half, but they ramped it up as the game got further and got closer and closer to the end. Argentina get better and better, which is a sign of, it wasn't desperation, it's just a sign of class, a sign of determination. There is no, in the football media in Argentina, it's much more rabid than it is in England. And they've got, really rabid fans in the stadium, the same as England all the time, wherever they're playing. So it's, the pressure on them is even greater, but the players seem to be just supporters, playing like supporters of the team. And Argentina were saying that they were scared. They thought they were going to go to England, but they just decided if they're going to go, we're going to go out fighting. And that's how you fight and you fight and you end up winning the bloody game. And I think it's the same. England just have that thing of we're winning the game. Oh, that's us going out. And I see this with Scotland at a much reduced level. We can't get a bloody first round group stage in our entire history. So there's something psychological has got to change there. But on Sunday in the final, I think we're just seeing the ongoing crowning of the greatest player of all time. I'm a Maradona man, so to speak. I grew up and Maradona's the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And I didn't see him half as regularly as you're able to see Lionel Messi. And Lionel Messi's, he's got Spanish citizenship as well as Argentinian citizenship. He could be going on about Gibraltar as much as he's going on about the Falklands. I don't think he goes on about either. Doesn't he get involved in that too much? He's not that kind of character, but he's played for Barcelona. He was disparagingly called the Catalan by Argentina fans until up until he retired, and up until he packed it in. Was it age of 28, 29 he was? Maybe just turning 29 when he packed it in with Argentina because he couldn't handle it. He'd lost 3 consecutive major finals: the Copa America final to Chile, World Cup final to Germany, then the Copa America final to Chile again. He's like, I'm done. I can't handle this anymore. And it was like, you can win all this stuff with Barcelona, but you can't win anything with Argentina. And I think there'll be a few folk probably thinking, but they begged him to come back, and he come back. 2018, Argentina were struggling to qualify for the World Cup in 2018. I think Messi comes in and scores a hat-trick in a game against Ecuador to get him over. And maybe that's when he starts to believe that he is a bit magical. And for me, the whole thing with Messi was he has to win the World Cup to prove that he's the best, to prove that he's better than Maradona. He has to win a World Cup. Pele won 2 World Cups and took part in a 3rd World Cup. He got injured early in '62, but he was there. He scored in '62, didn't he? In the early stages in Chile in '62 when Brazil went on to win that World Cup before he got injured and put out of it. It's Pele's won 2 World Cups and lost 1 final. So it really should be him in terms of achievements, but just me, my age, the way Maradona, Pele was surrounded by much better players. Brazil could win the World Cup without him, as they proved in his era. Argentina without Maradona couldn't. Eventually, they did in '78 though, because he'd already played for Argentina in '78. Maradona, he'd already played at 17 years old for the first team, and Cesar Menotti decided not to take him, not to have him in the '78 World Cup squad in Argentina. There's a big thing, by the way, about there's only 8 teams that won the World Cup and 8 countries that won the World Cup. In England, disparagingly, they're the only one to have won it at home, and but they only played every game. It's the only time England have played in the World Cup final. There's 6 of the 8 teams that have won it at home. It's only Spain and Brazil, funnily enough, who've never won the World Cup at home. So it's quite rare for anybody not to have won it. The 8 nations that have won it have all won it at home, except Brazil and Spain. But in '78, so it's basically from '78 right through. You've only got 2 World Cups from 1978 through to this Sunday at least. It's only the 1998 and 2002 World Cups for Argentina that don't involve Maradona or Messi. And Messi, I need to look back and see what's happened in 2002 if he's an outside chance of playing in that one. But it was Mario Kempes was the star for Argentina in '78, probably out of all the great stars they had in that team when they won the World Cup. But even by his absence, Maradona featured in the 1978 World Cup. So it's just these 2 players have carried them through. This is Argentina's 5th World Cup, 6th World Cup final. 78, 86, 90, 2014, 2020. This is the 6th World Cup final that I remember watching Argentina getting to. I watched the telly. I watched them getting there. And then they played in the first World Cup final in 1930. So it's their 7th overall, Argentina. It's quite an incredible record. They're getting up there. This would be their 4th. This would take them level with Italy and Germany if they were to win the thing. But for me, it's all about Messi. I think he's already confirmed himself as the greatest of all time. If he goes on and he wins a 2nd World Cup, then that's it, really. Because Maradona, for me, it was like Maradona won 1 World Cup, and then he dragged Argentina to that final, and then he really properly dragged them to another final in 1990 through the sheer kind of will against all odds that you're seeing at this World Cup as well with Argentina. And they lost that final. So with Messi having lost the final in 2014 and then won it in 2022, he's already equalled, as captain both times, already equalled, and in much the same style, what Maradona did. But Messi has scored in the final, Maradona didn't. Messi's won 2 Copa Americas. Argentina won the Copa America in Maradona's time, but he wasn't in either squad. When they won it a couple of times in the early 90s. So he's won much, and of course he won 10 La Ligas, and he's won 2 Ligue 1s with PSG, whereas Maradona won 2 Serie A titles, and he got to a UEFA Cup. He won the UEFA Cup with Napoli in '89, and it was tough days, and that was a great thing. It was taking Napoli to their first ever major honours. That was their first ever Serie A titles and their only European title to date, the only European final to date. But Messi's won the Champions League, scored twice in the final and stuff. Scored in 2 different finals. The Champions League, was it, what, 3 times he's won it altogether as a player. So he's in the Ballon d'Or thing. The Maradona he didn't qualify for the Ballon d'Or. They didn't let non-European players into it until I think 94 maybe. George Weah was the first non-European, although Alfredo Di Stefano was Argentinian, but he was naturalised Spanish. By the time he won it, Omar Savori was another. Getting away from the point here, the main thing is Maradona probably could have won as many as 8 Ballons d'Or as Messi if he'd qualified, if the rules were different, but he didn't. He's not won any. He got an honorary one, but Messi's won more than Maradona, and he's now going to play in more World Cup finals than Maradona did as well. If he goes and wins this thing, then it's just another piece of icing on his cake. I would like it. I don't really care. I think Spain are going to win it, but I feel as if Messi Donna wins on Sunday, then that takes him. It's Pele's record as well. That's him beating Pele. He's equal. He's won 2 World Cups, the same as Pele. But could he score another final? That's another record. That's scoring in another final. Pele scored in the 58 final and the 1970 final. And there's very few players. You get Paul Breitner did it. Vava, also of Brazil, he did it. Zinedine Zidane did it. You got Pele. Is that it? Oh no, it's Kylian Mbappe. He scored the 2018 final and in the 2022 final. Only one of 2 guys to score a hat trick. I think it was some English guy who scored a hat trick in a World Cup final. So there's a lot of things for Messi to do to confirm his greatness, but he's really just adding more laurel wreaths to a big pile of them as it is just to get to this World Cup final in this age, with the World Cup final being much harder to get to. I would imagine I feel as if it takes longer to get to, more sapping. It's phenomenal. You're watching something in action. I think Spain are going to win it, but I wouldn't be putting any money on it because it's very. They have a way of playing football, Spain, that's not the tiki-taka game that they won it with in 2010, and that was a kind of a watered-down version of the tiki-taka with Barcelona. There were a lot of Barcelona players in that team in 2010 when they won it in South Africa, but it looks very deliberate and it looks slow at times. I don't think Spain are as upfront, in your face, entertaining as Argentina when Argentina are doing the business. They're very methodical almost, but it's an amazingly world-class thing what they do. It's a slower version. They'll pass you to death. They'll always pass you to death. But you've got 2 teams, I say here, that are both drawn over 90 minutes with Cape Verde in this World Cup. Maybe that's not a disgrace. Maybe that shows how good they are. They didn't lose to Cape Verde. It's the two class outfits. It's a new World Cup final. They've never met before in the World Cup final. It's only Spain's second World Cup final, and I like that. I think it gives a bit of validity to the World Cup itself. It kind of proves that the tournament is the best in the world when a country. They're leaving England and Sweden behind as the only countries to have appeared in a World Cup final and never come back. Even Czechoslovakia and Hungary, who both lost, they've never won the World Cup, but they lost 2 finals each. I mean, Czechoslovakia is now 2 different countries, but I think there's something, if you can win, if you can get Sweden, probably the worst one now because they've never reached the final of the Euros either. They reached the final of the World Cup, but again, Sweden have finished 3rd and 4th. I think they've reached the semi-finals 4 times, or the semi-final stage 4 times, I think, altogether in the World Cup. So it's not a freak show. It's not a complete one-off. But Spain now, having won the World Cup, and they won it outside their own continent, they can win it outside their own continent again. Really, it'd be a major thing for them to win another World Cup, and it would confirm their place just now, Spain. Even when you look at like the Champions League final, the 2 managers and what have you, the Spanish coaching just now, it's quite a thing. And as I say, I think maybe this World Cup final has proven that you need a coach who is in with the players, as part of the furniture almost. Doesn't necessarily have to have coached massive club sides or anything. Is a kind of a real open collaboration between players and manager. You need a kind of almost a low profile manager these days, just to able to let everybody's voices be heard, for no one personality to dominate, even if in the case of Argentina, Messi's football skill is dominating. Sorry folks, it's taking far too long, but I've abandoned you for a couple of weeks, and I'll hit you with kind of smaller reaction pods to what's happened this weekend. On Monday, I'll give you a reaction to both games, I think, the third, fourth place playoff and the final itself. But or maybe I'll do one. Maybe I'll do one for you on Sunday night straight after the World Cup final. But it's enough to keep you going, just more than enough. I just find it really fascinating. I find it quite a thing that we're getting to the end of this World Cup, which has been draining. It's been utterly draining. There's no way. I don't know how many. I need to count up how many games I actually watched live. Most of the last 32 and all that. I have to say, England against Mexico was one of the most absorbing games of football I've ever seen, and it had to be. I ended up watching it in my bed. I went on holiday down to England, and it was almost pointless because it was so fucking warm, and I am so fat, and I don't like the sun at the best of times, but being old and fat is making it even worse. A baldy ex-ginger, but it's even my wife, who quite likes the sun, she's like, I can't move. It was just total heat wave down south, even worse than it was up here. It's bad enough up here just now in Glasgow, but last week it was unreal. So we had a couple of days of dotting about, and then it was just, oh, Jesus. And England are playing Mexico, and it get put back. We're already struggling to stay up that late, even though we're on holiday to watch it. And then it get put back because of the storms and all that. Nah, I'm not watching this. So I tried to go to bed, but because of the heat, I couldn't sleep. It was horrible at night time, as you'll know yourself. Down there it was even worse. So I ended up lying in my bed, with all the windows open, in the middle of this English street, kind of cul-de-sac, basically. This would kind of hire this wee, supposed to be a cottage, it was just somebody's house, basically, a kind of Brookside type close. And I remember I was in Ripon in Yorkshire for the final of Euro 24, the 2024 European Championship final, when England were playing Spain in the final of that. And I was thinking, I'm in Yorkshire when England are playing in a major final. Maybe this is a bad move or whatever, but we just went and we watched it in our cottage, a beautiful wee cottage. And this was quite isolated. But the thing with Ripon, if you know Ripon at all, and I would recommend anybody to visit there, they have a kind of ceremony where there's an ancient ceremony. I can't remember what it's called, the Night Watchman or something like that. There's a guy goes into the town square, and there's a wee march around the town square. This has been going on for centuries, and he blows this massive horn. All kind of double entendres aside, he blows this massive horn, makes this massive, and you can hear it. And went up and watched the ceremony one night. It's around about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. Just to make sure everybody's indoors or something like that. It's brilliant, beautiful stuff. One for the tourists. So you hear that, but then they've got the Sunday morning, the church bells. My God, is it a cathedral? Ripon Cathedral. It's unbelievable. The church bells in the Sunday morning, but the church bells that are going off every half hour. Then on the hour, you can hear it everywhere. So England equalise in that game against Spain in the final Euro 2024. Straight across, open the windows in the digs to only like 2 minutes for town. Couldn't hear a thing. Dead. And we'd seen some pubs decked out during the day, some pubs decked out in the old St George's Crosses and all that, but it was just no noise at all. And then I'm watching, so I'm lying in my bed down in Pickering, this place down in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire Moors, and I'm lying in bed. I couldn't sleep a wink, and I've got the phone out because BBC Sports app, and you just bring up the game. You can watch it live on your phone, and I just sat there with the windows wide open, and I watched this game. And when England scored their goals in that game against Mexico, I heard one yelp coming through, and I'm actually in a busy street this time. It's quite an amazing thing. Not everybody's into football as you think they might be, but I was lying there watching this game, and it was utterly absorbing. And nobody says it is not a phrase. He who beats Mexico will win the World Cup. That's not a thing. But he who beats Mexico in Mexico, especially in the Azteca, but he who beats Mexico in the World Cup finals, when Mexico are hosting the World Cup finals, does reach the final. Italy beat them, put them out the 1970 World Cup. This wasn't in the Azteca, but they put them at the 1970 World Cup, and Italy, of course, lost that final to Brazil 4-1, and Germany put them out in penalties again, not in the Azteca, in the 1986 World Cup, when Mexico were hosting that, in Germany, West Germany, as they were then, lost the final to Maradona's Argentina in the Azteca, and there's England going out there and beating them 3-1, and down to 10 men, and the rain and all that in the Azteca. Is even watching it on telly, or even watching it on your bloody phone when it's like a matchbox size screen. It's quite a place. You can feel the atmosphere across your your device, never mind actually being in the place. And what a performance it was. It was scintillating to watch, but England did not get to the final, and that's quite a thing. It's quite a thing thinking England might never get to another World Cup final. I don't know what that says about the game, but Spain are back in a World Cup final. They're going to try and win the thing for the second time in their history. Argentina are going to try and win it for the fourth time in their history, which would mean they're only behind Brazil. And that means a lot. That means a lot to people in Argentina. I can tell you that for nothing. So I hope you enjoy the games, folks. I would recommend you watch the third, fourth place playoff match as well, now that you know all the records that are out there to be beaten. And I will come back to you with, this is the problem, I don't talk to you for a while. It makes it even worse. There's so much to catch up on. The podcast goes on for far too long. Remember, you're having trouble sleeping on a wet, or a sweaty, sweaty Glasgow evening, or a sweaty evening, wherever you are, and you can listen to my ranting nonsense, maybe working in a kind of ASMR way and putting you over. But enjoy the final two matches, the two finals, the bronze medal one and the gold medal final of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And thanks for your company during it, folks.